Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel. It's Grace, and the video that I'm going to be doing today is going to be my spoiler thoughts on the book New Spring by Robert Jordan, which is the prequel to the Wheel of Time series, which you probably know if you've clicked on this video. But I do want to mention just right here at the start that I have currently read all the way up until the end of Fires of Heaven, which is the 5th book in the main series, and then I've moved on to New Spring from there. So I'm not sure how much I will go into the events of the main timeline, but just as a fair warning, it could contain spoilers up until the end of the Fires of Heaven, but not beyond that, and I know that I cannot speak on spoilers beyond that because I haven't read beyond that. So if you haven't read all the way until Fires of Heaven, you may want to click off this video just in case. So with that said, I am going to get into my spoiler thoughts about New Spring, the prequel. So this takes place about 20 years before the events of The Eye of the World, and we follow Moiraine and Lan, obviously in their younger years. And I really liked this. I gave it 4 stars, and I feel like this is a much simpler story. And the reason that I say simpler is because I don't think that this is simple by any means, but there are inevitably not nearly as many plot threads as there are in the main series. The main series is a lot more epic, and even though this takes place in the same epic, expansive world as the main series, we're just not dealing with as many characters. We're not dealing with as much new information, I would say, because there's a lot of exploration of the White Tower and Aes Sedai and the power and things of that nature in this book, but those are things that we've already been introduced to in the main series, so it's not as though you are necessarily wondering what's going on, being introduced to all of these new things. It doesn't feel like that. So in that sense, I think that this story feels a lot simpler. And even though this is representing the beginning of essentially the end of the world, this represents the beginning of when the dragon was reborn, when people started to realize that these prophecies were actually coming into actuality in their lifetime. This story still feels quieter for some reason, and I liked that about it. I liked that this had plot moving it forward, but it moved kind of slowly also, because basically we are following Moiraine and Lan, as I mentioned, but we're following Moiraine and Swan when they are accepted, and all the way through until Moiraine bonds Lan as her warder. So I'll start from the beginning. We start with Moiraine and Swan when they are in the room with the current Amyrlin seat, who is named Tamra, and her keeper of the chronicles, Gitara. And they are basically just attendants to them while they're doing a task, because they're concerned with the Aiel War, which of course also takes place 20 years before the main timeline of the Wheel of Time story, which is how we can place that timeline. This story is starting basically just as the Aiel War is ending. So we have Moiraine and Swan as attendants to Tamra and Gitara in the Amyrlin's study, but they witness something very critical, which is Gitara having a foretelling that the dragon will be reborn and then dying right there on the spot. So Tamra, of course, doesn't want anyone to know about this, or at least doesn't want anyone to needlessly know about it. So swears Swan and Moiraine to secrecy, and then sends them off to start doing this task along with all of the other accepted to go find the names of all the babies that are being born around Dragon Mount and around Tar Valon in that timeline, because it's very important for them to know what baby is going to be born on the slopes of the Dragon Mount, because that is a requirement for finding out who the dragon reborn is. So they want to record the names of every single baby that has been born in this timeline, which is obviously a huge and arduous task that they've been set, but all of the Accepted are doing it, and Moiraine and Swan take this task very seriously and very personally because they are two of the only people who know the true meaning behind this search, because they were there to witness the foretelling. And there's a bunch of time in this book spent on this early stages of their search for the Dragon Reborn. And then basically we have Moiraine and Swan both testing to become full Aes Sedai, and both passing, of course, since we know who they are in the main series. But one thing that I found really interesting was actually getting some insight in this book into what it takes to become a full Aes Sedai. And even before they go for their tests, the hints that we got earlier on about what they do to practice, and the fact that they have to practice 100 weaves perfectly, nothing can break their concentration, and it has to be fast, like they have to be so good at it, and it makes sense, you know? Like, the fact that Aes Sedai are so serene, they are outwardly calm at all times, they need to be calm under pressure, they need to, that is how they can use the power the most effectively, and we learn that about them, and how like calm, cool, and collected they are, and why that's important for what they do. And so I just liked the way that that tied in, like the way that they train and the way that they actually test to become Aes Sedai, with all of these like really grueling and honestly terrifying 100 trials where they have to do the weaves perfectly. Like, it makes sense that that is how you would have to test to be an Aes Sedai. So I really liked learning about that. I thought that that was fascinating. Basically, just really loved that that was included. And then earlier on in the book, we don't get a ton of Lan. We do see him a little bit. We see that he was fighting in the Southlands against the Aiel, and we actually see that at the very start of the book. And from his perspective, we get the sense that the Aiel are retreating because there's a battle that never actually comes to fruition that Lan was involved in, trying to lead soldiers against the Aiel. So we get that from his perspective, but then Lan returns north to the borderlands, where he is torn on what to do because he doesn't want to drag anyone else into his personal war, but his first lover, who I'm still kind of unclear on the Malkieri customs, but your first lover seems to have quite a bit of power over you in their customs, and she wants to declare him king and to essentially form a following for him of people who remember Malkier and crown Lan as king, and make him like a king in more than title and more than like formality from this dead kingdom. They want to actually take back Malkier and recreate it. And this is, I think, a point of big like internal conflict for Lan, but that kind of comes later in Moiraine's storyline when their paths cross. So in the meantime, back in the White Tower, we have Moiraine and Swan starting to learn the ways a little bit of being blue sisters and learning more, but there starts to be some mysterious deaths. So the Amyrlin that was sitting when this foretelling was made by her Keeper of the Chronicles has died under mysterious circumstances, and some of the other Aes Sedai that she has set to the task of trying to discreetly find out who the Dragon Reborn was have all started dying, and based on what we know, there's obviously some suspicion here that this has to do with Black sisters and the Aes Sedai that do follow the Dark One. It's not certain, like Moiraine and Swan aren't gonna jump to that conclusion immediately necessarily. Like, they do eventually come around to that line of thinking, but that doesn't seem to be as prominent. Like, they know about dark friends, they know that they exist, but that doesn't seem to be nearly as much of a concern as it is in the main series timeline. So they're kind of figuring this out on the fly, and they know that there are mysterious circumstances. And when a new Amyrlin is chosen, they tell Moiraine to remain in Tervalon in the tower, and Moiraine thinks, well, no, I'm not going to do that because you just want me to ascend to the Sun Throne and become the Queen of Cairhien, but I don't want to do that, so I'm gonna leave. So it's kind of a mixture of that and Moiraine wanting to continue her search for the Dragon Reborn, but discreetly. So Moiraine leaves and she goes north to the Borderlands, and this is basically where she crosses paths with Lan for the first time. She sees him on the road, and I thought that her thoughts on them were really interesting because she follows Lan and his two companions thinking that one of them or all of them could be dark friends, and it turns out that she's right about one of them. But I really like her. I like her logic. Like, I like the way that Moiraine's brain works, and I like being in her perspective just because of the way that she thinks of them, and she's very confident in her own abilities. Like, they are all very skilled swordsmen, but Moiraine is not worried whatsoever. Like, she follows them into the woods, and she does encounter Lan, who then throws her into a pond, but it's not like she's actually in danger from him, but she could have been, you know? But she's just like, she's a very strong woman, and even at that young age, even when she's only been Aes Sedai for a few months, she is like, she just goes and gets it. Like, she knows what she wants, and she will go after her goals, and I really like following her. And I think Lan is equally interesting in this situation because it's interesting to see how they conduct themselves around each other when they don't know each other. Because when we meet them in the main series, they've been bonded as Aes Sedai and Warder for 20 years. And they work as a unit, they work seamlessly, they know what one another are thinking, and they present a very like unified front. But Moiraine tries to play pranks on Lan. She tries to get a reaction out of him. She's trying to get him to apologize for throwing her in the pond, but all she's really doing is antagonizing him further. And Lan is trying to keep his temper and not lose it with this tiny woman that he doesn't even know what to make of. And it was really entertaining just seeing like both of their personalities come out. And it is funny to see that Moiraine has such a temper because she's, like I mentioned with Aes Sedai, she's so serene, cool, calm, and collected in the main series, but she's had 20 years of practice at that. So it's nice to get a peek behind the curtain and see that, like, you know, she was more immature at one point, but you can definitely see the person that she already is and how she grows into be the person that we know in the main series. And the same with Lan, although I don't necessarily think that he has changed as much. He's still very stoic and honorable and a very skilled swordsman and knows what he wants, but I don't know, Lan is very interesting just because, like, he does a lot with very little. Like, you don't necessarily see his character jumping off the page, but it's a very, like, quiet steadiness of interest, if that even makes sense. I like following his character quite a bit. So they part ways after riding together to one of the cities, but they inevitably do meet each other again because Lan goes to see his first love. I don't know how to say the word that is used for that in the book, but he goes to see her and she unexpectedly declares him the king of Malkier. And this is obviously a shock to Lan, and she wants him to marry her daughter, and Lan doesn't want to do this, and you can kind of see it all coming to a head where he wants to run. He doesn't want this. He doesn't want to lead an army of men into the Blight. He doesn't want to drag everyone else into this personal war of his. This is something that he wants to do alone, and so he doesn't make a bunch of other people suffer, I think. And then Moiraine is seeking a woman who had a child in that critical 10-day period after the foretelling of the Dragon Reborn. So she ends up in the palace as well at the same time as Lan. And then we have another Aes Sedai, a very old, powerful Aes Sedai, is also then in the palace and kind of wonders what Moiraine is doing there and is a little bit suspicious of why she's there. And Moiraine, in turn, is also a little bit suspicious of why Moiraine is there, which is the very old sister. And so I thought it was really, really interesting in the way that things came to a head, because I said that I liked the way that Moraine's mind works, and I do. And I think that part of that is the reason that she grew up playing the game of houses in Cairhien, and so that's the way that her mind works. And her mind is working through like which Aes Sedai could be working against her, which Aes Sedai could be working for the Black Ajah. And it's funny, like it's fun to see her puzzle it out. I also really like that she goes for Siuan to help with a puzzle as well, because as smart as Moiraine is, that is Siuan's strength, and they're both very present in this book, and I really liked their friendship. So I liked that Siuan wasn't just put to the side for the climax of this book. She still was, she may not have been involved in the battle, but she still was involved and allows both of them to figure out what's going on together. So Siuan was set the task of trying to actually find the infant and find out whether he was the dragon reborn. Meanwhile, Moiraine is investigating what Meereen is doing and what she wants in the palace. And what she wants is to kill the dragon reborn, except the other sisters, like, and probably most of the Aes Sedai, to be fair, not just the Black Ajah, but most of the Aes Sedai don't actually know that the dragon reborn is an infant that was born right after the foretelling. They don't know who it is at all. So they're seeking out men that they think might be able to channel. And one of them is the Crown Prince's son, because he had a very lucky fall where he fell quite some way and really didn't get injured. So they think that he might be able to channel, and she's there trying to kill him. And Moiraine and Lan walk into this situation where they're like, the Crown Prince, his son, and the daughter that Lan was supposed to be married to are there struggling against Meereen, and one of Lan's companions is with them as well. Turns out to be a dark friend. That would be Rhine. So it is very interesting because Moiraine kind of figured this out, whereas Lan didn't, but Lan is ready to defend them because that's who he is, and he's an extremely good fighter. So he's defending them, and Moiraine is throwing everything she has at this fellow Aes Sedai that is way more powerful than her. But like I said, she is brave. Like, she goes for it and goes and gets it. And I loved the way that she handled herself in this situation, because like the thoughts going through her head are basically like, I have to win or I'm gonna die. And she still tries her hardest anyway. She doesn't shy away from it by any means. And she still attempts to save them even though she's unsuccessful, which of course is sad. And it's going to impact her, but like she really did try her best, and she did really well. She in the end attacked Meereen with a knife, which is a method that she would not have been expecting, because Moiraine is smart and she knows how to get things done. So I was very proud of her and Lan for winning that fight. And when she heals him after that fight, I kind of feel like their fates are sealed, even though Lan tries to leave and go to the Blight by himself. When Moiraine follows him, I thought the fact that he had stopped and was kind of just having a fire on top of a hill pretty much indicated that he wasn't really trying to run away. Like, he might have been, but he was leaving the door open for Moiraine to come find him, and she did. And I thought, in the same way that I said earlier that like the way that you test for an Aes Sedai, the way that you test to be an Aes Sedai just makes sense in terms of what we know of them. I really liked how everything came together at the end of this book, because I just felt that the journeys that Moiraine and Lan had been on together in such a short time really did make it make sense, like why she is invested in this quest to find the Dragon Reborn, and why Lan would also be invested in this, because what he might not be able to do for his dead kingdom, he can still do in the fight against the Shadow with her. So I thought that, like I said, made sense, fit together really well, and I really liked where they ended up. So overall, I just thought that this was like well constructed, a nice little break from the main timeline, which I feel like I've forgotten some details from, but I am going to go into a quick spoiler for the Fires of Heaven. That just makes it even more sad to me when Moiraine dies and sacrifices herself to get Lanfear and to kill the both of them together, because it just goes to show you that this is who she is and has been, and this is what she's been fighting for over 20 years. So of course, if she needs to do what needs to be done, she'll do it, and she won't hesitate. And I really love that about her. So I think that I did ask people when they recommended reading New Spring and after Fires of Heaven was a possibility, and I think that just given the fact that that event happened at the end of Fires of Heaven, this was the perfect time for me to read it, because I feel even more connected to Moiraine's character, and I'm looking forward to seeing where Lan goes in the main series, but like, I feel even more connected to the both of them, and I'm really glad for that, because I really like following both of them, and I really like both of their characters. I think they're really well done and really interesting. So, like I mentioned, I did give this 4 stars. I'm sure there are things that I'm forgetting to say, but tell me what you think down in the comments. Please, if you do comment, no spoilers past Fires of Heaven. I am going to start Lord of Chaos soon, but as of filming this, I have not started it. I've only read the first 5 books. So I do ask that there are no spoilers for like the series as a whole, anything like that, in the comments. So thank you so much for watching. That is going to be it for this one. Again, let me know what you think of New Spring down in the comments, and like if you liked the video, subscribe if you want to see more content from me, and I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye!